Welcome to our podcast, Navigating the Healing Path with Maggie and Nikki. For the remainder of our first season, we're going to be shifting from discussing some of the foundational building blocks to living an authentic, heart-based life into some of the deeper, more nuanced and complex components and practices of really walking and embodying this healing journey. So if these topics interest you or resonate on a deeper level, then we'd be delighted if you stick around for the ride.
Greetings, everyone. Listen to me. I am being neutral, which means having no feeling and no expressing of big emotions. This is the goal for human beings on Earth, right? No. I kid you. That's not really being neutral. Neutrality isn't about not having emotions. It's more about a state of being that you position yourself in throughout the day so that you are more capable of noticing and identifying your environment, the emotions that do naturally come up, as well as the influence others may have on you. We're going to get into it now, so stick around to hear about the whys and the benefits of neutrality. As a collective group, we are going to take a moment and become present. With whatever you're doing, take a few moments with us and connect with yourself through the breath and receive in and out. And one more deep breath in and release. There's so much magic in the breath. Perfect amount of space to connect, to ground, to bring your focus, to drop into your heart so that you can communicate and speak with love, even the hard things. Do you feel grounded, Maggie? You had a moment.
Is that a threat?
No. Oh, I wasn't using sarcasm. No, I was really making sure that you had a good moment to do the things you needed to do.
Okay. No, it was just your comment that you better.
No.
Wait, what did you say?
No, I didn't say you better. I said, do you feel better?
Oh, do I feel better?
Did you feel better?
I thought you asked, do you feel grounded? You better. And I'm like, yeah.
Oh my God.
I mean, I do feel better, but geez.
Oh, misunderstandings lead to good comedy.
They really do. Yeah, I do. I needed that. I've had 2 cups of Earl Grey black tea, and I think my mind has been a whirlwind a bit today. Very active. And so it's nice to remember to breathe oxygen a little bit more than I have been today. But that was very helpful. Thank you.
Breathing, very good.
Yes.
I highly recommend.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But okay, cool. Well, welcome back to the podcast.
Here we are.
We are talking about the phenomena of neutrality. Would you like to repeat your initial question?
Well, just the concept of being neutral throughout your day. This was something that both you and Polly were grasping with as something that's really uncomfortable. Like, why? Or, ooh, this is hard, and I'm like, and I was kind of curious as to why. Why is that hard?
Okay. Yeah, for me, I was bringing up an interaction I had with a person that I'm friends with that I was hanging out with. And I've been in a mode of evaluating like how all of my relationships make me feel and just kind of seeing their different place and if maybe they need to shift as I'm shifting and growing into this quote unquote new version of myself, but more so just the authentic, genuine self and dropping all of the masks and layers that I've collected throughout this lifetime as coping mechanisms for pain. While I was spending time with this person, I was like, just kind of noticing there's just a lot of neutrality that I felt as like I was driving home. I go, I'm not necessarily like super amped up, or like I'm not filled with a ton of energy. Like maybe I would be having conversations with you just because I feel like we can get to such like a high place, and we also share like a lot of stuff, which is really cathartic. But I don't necessarily have that same dynamic with this friend or with other people in my life. So I was driving home and I'm like, for a while I feel like I've thought that if people don't like give me an exuberant amount of energy and that I don't feel this like ecstaticness when I leave, I thought that that was a bad sign. I feel like that's kind of the impression that I've got as I'm been doing all this work and looking at myself and my relationships. I'm like, oh, that's a red flag. Like I'm not filled with good energy. Like what's going on? But it was actually just really neutral energy because I didn't leave feeling drained by any means. I just felt really chill. And I was like, oh, yeah, that was good. That was fine. But I think because a lot of the information that is out there, especially for people beginning to look at their relationships with themselves and with the people around them, I feel like it's a very common thing in the beginning to hear, like, oh, you should ask yourself when you're done hanging out with somebody, are you filled with energy? Because that's usually, I'm trying to remember. I feel like you've had this information before. Like, I feel like the expectation for relationships, especially in like spiritually awakened people, is that the only people you should spend time with is the people that like really, really light you up. And I kind of got that into my head and I'm like, oh, well, certain people aren't lighting me up, so I'm just going to completely push them away. And I'm like, oh, that's bad. Rather than just realizing, oh, some people are neutral, but they're not draining and they're not bad. Maybe they don't tick a certain box of expectation that I have in my head for other people or...
I hear you. When we're used to living in the extremes, hot and cold, black and white, good and bad, right?
Yeah.
There's very little room for people to just be in that gray, neutral area. I can see why that wouldn't feel safe because the standard operating procedure is either high or low. It's one of these two extremes.
Yeah.
And when we're looking for those extremes to validate our experience or know where we're supposed to be, that's so extreme. And you're cutting out so many other possibilities and opportunities for yourself and to be there and have relationships with others.
Yeah. Sorry, can I add a quick note? That reminded me that I feel like the past that I've had relationships with people, they've been so charged more on like the quote unquote negative end of the spectrum that I think now that I'm on the opposite end, but I'm still looking for that like same level of stimulation just on the opposite side where it has to be like overtly good and like overtly like really positive as I'm trying to like create and shape this life for myself that I feel like is more aligned than it ever has been. So it's like my standards have raised and I feel like everything in my life has to go with it, which is fair, but also I haven't really been leaving any room for like neutrality. So like that's a new thing for me. I feel like I just kind of like
vacillate
flopped
between
over.
The two.
Yeah. Like I'm more so just now on like this other end of the spectrum of like, oh, only good feeling things is what I want to invest my time into. So neutrality felt really weird. It's like, what was that? A lot of people say, or like romantically, often we think, especially for those of us with anxiety, we think like getting the butterflies is like a good thing when you have a crush on somebody. But what you should actually be looking for is the person who like makes you calm and quiet because that's often a way safer thing. So I feel like that's what I'm going through is like, oh, I'm looking for like this certain level of stimulation.
Right. Normal. I get it. I get that.
Yeah.
I do. Both to me are kind of like red flags. Like if you're in somebody's space and you spend time with them and you leave feeling depleted and less than and not good about yourself, they were stealing your energy. They were sucking it all out of the room, right? Like you were a battery. We like to call them energy vampires, right? Not great. That's not sustainable. The other extreme, what makes me pause and look at that is with my experience of having people love bomb as a way of emotionally manipulating you and getting you to feel really good about yourself because they're pumping you full of those really good feelings, especially if you've been devoid of that or been denied that so long because you weren't good enough. When somebody's love bombing you, I've learned that that is also unhealthy. There is a way to get there naturally. Like, oh my God, like honestly, the self-care club on Sundays these days is a friggin' love fest. Like, we just love each other all like just so much that that's just sort of what it is. But that's also the space that we're creating, and it's safe. And we have rules, not rules, but like agreements,
Right.
Foundational respect.
Yeah. And we're not like overdoing it.
Right.
And especially if someone like isn't like in a great space to receive, we back off.
Right. But also it wasn't like that in the beginning. It didn't become like that until you all started to really get to know each other.
That's true.
And it just sort of evolved into that naturally because emotions evolve. They grow, they deepen. You want to take your time and feel people out.
Yeah.
Which is why being in a neutral position is really, really informative. So neutral has been something that I have been dabbling with for some years now, but pretty much because I needed to learn to feel myself because I was so used to feeling everybody else's emotions, taking on their problems, being responsible for helping them because that's the role I was made into be. That this idea of being neutral also was kind of uncomfortable, but I saw the benefit of that because it provides perspective, right? Because if you're high or low, you're very much in it, and that's pretty much all you can see, like you're saturated in it. But when you're neutral, you can see better and more clearly. And also it can really give you a lot more information, right? Like I've told you the story about how I found my massage school. Like I started like, okay, I heard the message, I heard the calling, I got to go learn how to listen better and really learn some tools. I have a natural gift of touch, but let's go ahead and get some of these tools under my belt and learn more. So as I was trying to figure out what school to go to, I'm like, all right, guys, tell me, where am I going? And I started thinking about who I know and where they went. And so I started looking at all of these local like massage schools and bodywork schools and stuff, and nothing was jumping out. So I called my Reiki master, I'm like, I don't know why I'm calling you, buddy, but here we are because Spirit told me to call you. So what you got for me? And he goes, okay, you know what? Yeah, actually I know 2 people that went to IPSB. And so I look it up, and it was at the time it was the Institute of Psychostructural Balancing. Now it's integrated psychostructural bodywork, which is awesome. I love it. It's all the same, but just rebranded, new owners, love them all. Shout out. But I started to look at it, and on the website, it was just like it started to light me up. So I'm like, okay, but it was so far because I was living in the Valley, and it's in Culver City. I'm like, oh God, traffic in Los Angeles. Oh God. So trying to figure that out. So there were pros and cons. I was already feeling the resistance of my mind, but I'm like, my spirit's like, can you just go look, just go be in the space. So I'm like, great, I'm going to go to the open house. So I go to the open house being like, okay, I'll know it's for me if I feel things and I have all this good, happy, joyful energy. And it's like, yeah. So I get there. And at this point, I've already been in like the More Love Club. I've already started my transformation work and know how to hold space and like ground. I've been meditating. So I'm already on my journey. And this is just sort of like the next natural thing for me. I get there super excited. And then I realize after the whole thing, I was present. I made connections. I said hello. They were doing Tai Chi. I'm like, this is amazing. But I didn't feel anything. And I realized that even in the space, I'm like, nothing. And I was kind of confused, and I like let it go, but I was still joyful, but really neutral. And then it was when I was leaving and I was driving home and I was talking to my husband, and I was just like, I was so neutral. I thought it would be like fireworks and all this big stuff. And I'm like, it was just so chill. And then that was when I was like, it was chill. I felt safe. I felt okay. I didn't need to be somebody else. I didn't nobody was there was no emotional manipulation. There was no crazy sales tactics. There was no high pressure stuff. It was an open, communicative community of healers who are like, hi, this is what we do. This is what we're here for. If you like it, let us know. We'd love to work with you. And it was surprising. But that was ultimately how I knew, because one of their tenets, one of the things that they teach is holding space. They hold space, they're neutral, and they move energy. They don't have anything on it. So I'm like, yes, this is going to take this seeded thing, this thing that I've been working on with neutrality and groundedness and holding space and all of this. And they were going to take that and here's more. And so it helped me further this understanding of neutrality when it comes to healing, right? We actually had classes on this, why it's important, which I love because my other metaphysical teacher, Adrian, would talk to us about this too. And then in the healing classes, they were like, you have to have no need for that person to get better. That is not your responsibility. Your job is to be neutral. And for some people, they're like, no, but I have so much love. I just want them to be better. I'm like, that's not for you. You're changing the recipe. The moment that you insert your need into somebody's healing journey, you've changed it. You've made it conditional. You've set your value on their betterment.
It's a little codependent too, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
So this was our practice of communicating boundaries and just communication in general and making sure that we are responsible for our energy. And we were taught how to disconnect, different ways to disconnect from our clients, physically, energetically, emotionally, all of this stuff. And it was amazing. So that's where I position myself when I do my healing work. Because if I need you to get better, that's about me. I'm making your session that you're paying me for about me and my healing. So that's not fair. So being neutral sometimes is actually the best sign. Because for me, neutrality is baseline. Okay? So growing up, you were relating this to me earlier, how as a kid you were just wired. You were strung up, really stressed, just that high anxiety kind of state of being.
As a teen.
I
was a happy-go-lucky little kid.
Of course. That's the goal and idea. But yeah, as we grow and we learn this, we become different versions of ourselves. But if that's your normal, if high strung is your normal, what always comes to mind are muscles, because, I'm a body worker. But muscle length is important. Just when certain muscles get shortened, they get really stressed and tense, but the other muscles on the other side are getting way too elongated. So you want to reach this balance. But when you're learning how to stretch a muscle, you have to go past the comfort, the boundary, just slightly, just on the other side. You don't want to break it, right? We're not into the breaking thing, but just to the edge of discomfort is where we like to bring people. And then you hold it there. And then what that does is after a couple minutes, it communicates with the muscle that it's being invited to have a longer resting phase, or state. You know what I mean? So it's instead of being so short, there's a little bit longer. So that's what this is. It's you, in this neutral ideas, you're creating a new baseline so that you're protected, you're safe, you're not super excited or jazzed or anxious, and you're also not super low and depressed. It's you're learning to live in the middle, right? And the reason why this is good is because when you're really sensitive and you go into places, one, you want to protect yourself and you don't want to be so high strung because that doesn't feel good. It does not feel good in the body to experience life in this way. And this is why I do this work, because so that me personally, can feel better living in my meat suit. because I desire to have a better experience in this world. And I was tired of being sad and depressed and angry and all of those crazy up and down extreme feelings, So I'm like, wouldn't it just be really relaxing just to be neutral and peaceful as the baseline, so that when I go out in the world, whether I meet somebody new or I go to a party, which doesn't happen because it's too many people, but unless I know them all. Anyway, I have social anxiety, but that was before.
Yeah, what if it was a party of just like all of the lovely, beautiful, healing women?
Well, that would be completely different, because then there's all that space for me, and I know there's room, but it just kind of like becomes you can read people that way. Because like if you just, okay, here I am, neutral, just having my day. And then somebody, you meet them, and then you notice how you feel when you're with them and when they're gone. And what it just gives you information. Right. So anything so far on that? Are we good?
Yeah. No, I mean, that makes a lot of sense to me. I'm just kind of like going through and thinking about all the different times that I've just like gone into different spaces or have been spending time with people, and I come in at a certain end of the spectrum. And I feel like I really haven't had a lot of time in the neutrality swimming pool, I guess, if you will, or at least consciously. And I'm reflecting on yesterday a little bit too. Nikki and I, we went out to a couple local, I don't want to say like metaphysical shops. Earth and Soul wasn't really
that was like a natural shop that had like, oh my God, like herbs.
A whole bunch of
herbs and natural solutions for cleaning and products. It was just
medicinal stuff.
It was so neat. Shout out neat. Earth and Soul in Sherman Oaks on Ventura.
Yeah, for real.
Go Bobby. And then, the other place, the Imagine Center for Light Workers. Go Goddess Tallulah. Can't wait to meet that woman. Her shop was amazing. Mm-hmm. I was so high the moment I walked in there. It was amazing. I was really neutral when I went. I was excited to see you. It was raining, but I'm like, yay, we're going to do this thing. But the moment we walked in, I'm like, whoa! Oh, this is grounded and it's clear and it's open and look at everything. Like it was amazing.
Yeah. Well, that one for me, I was kind of coming in with a lot of anxiety because not that I had like expectation of going in there, but this was like a new step for me on my employment hunt. Mm-hmm. And so with the past jobs and stuff that I've had, like I've never really like put myself out there and just like gone to a place and been like, hey, are you guys hiring? So that was already very scary. And I've just had like a lot of anxiety the last week or so. So I kind of went in there with that level of energy. But as I walked in and we met the lady or the person at the front counter,
Dominique.
Who was lovely.
She was lovely.
And smelled like the incense and like caught the vibe. So many crystals. I feel like it did kind of bring me up more to like that neutral baseline, and I felt some of the anxiety fade. But then going to Earth and Soul, it was kind of the opposite, where I feel like I was feeling better and more excited, I think, to go into that one because that was the shop that I found. Mm-hmm. And I think Spirit has been guiding me to maybe get into herbalism stuff.
I think so.
Had a really great feeling off looking off the website, and I kind of went in on the other end of the spectrum where I was kind of really excited and I kind of had like high expectations, and I'm like, ooh, what are we going to find here? And then that also kind of brought me down, I think, to like a neutral baseline, which is really interesting. And one of the other things too, I mean, just with that story, I think it's just interesting to observe, and I feel like that's very telling about like the spaces that exactly both of them are kind of like making me feel neutral. I feel like those are good signs from what I'm learning. But as you were talking, something too, this idea that I've heard I feel like this is more of like an Eckhart Tolle kind of perspective or type of information and wisdom that I've heard, that I feel like it's been in the back of my mind, but I haven't like really meditated on it. I just like hear it on occasion. But the whole thing of neutrality just kind of reminds me of how, like, because meditation, it teaches you to have and helps you to create space within yourself so you can detach from your feelings more, right? Mm-hmm. Usually people talk about like the bad feelings, at least in the beginning. But I feel like a later lesson is also learning to detach a bit from even good feeling and positive emotions. because we're spirits living a human experience. We shouldn't, I don't love the word shouldn't. It could potentially behoove us and be beneficial on our journey to have a certain level of detachment for everything that we experience, bad and also good. So that way we don't identify with those things because everything is temporary.
Or get addicted to them.
Right.
And need them.
And I notice in myself when I have negative, quote unquote, negative emotions or like lower vibrational feelings come up, I'm a lot quicker to do like a detachment and like space holding process for myself versus when I have something really great happen to me. Because then I kind of notice that I cling on to it a little bit more. I'm like, oh, this is amazing. And I tend to fully identify with that. Whereas obviously, like, it's easier to detach from like a negative feeling because I don't want to feel it anyway. Right. So it's easier to kind of remember, oh, this is temporary. It's okay. But with the positive feeling, I'm just like, let me hold on to this. It feels really great. I want to experience the whole thing.
It is really nice, especially when you're not used to it.
Yeah.
And you want to have as much as you can. Like if you didn't grow up eating sugar and then you're an adult and you can have all the dessert you want, you overdo it.
Right.
You can.
Yeah.
When you're denied something for so long, you'll want to overdo the extreme. Both are exhausting. Like having a down frequency kind of day or in a group of people where there's just no room and you're belittled, all that crap, that's exhausting.
Yeah, definitely.
Also,
so coming back to that level of neutrality, like that's what was in the back of my head as you were explaining all of this. It's like, oh, that's kind of exactly just what neutrality is. It's just that practice of coming back to base and not overly identifying and overly attaching to the things, no matter what they are.
Because even the healing circle that you attended a couple of weeks ago with us, I was high for like 3 days leading up to it because I was getting ready and like excited and trying this new stuff. And then, flying high that day during the event, just totally channeling and high, like just all of that. That was great. The next day, crashing. Good night. Out for 2 days. Like even that high frequency requires muscle building.
Yeah.
You know, like to be able to maintain that high frequency so that I can help be that conduit and help tune other people a bit higher than where they are. You know, it's still work, both the positive and the negative. It's about the balance. And so this brings me around to, if this feels like a good time, to help people understand the cycle of energy processing. This was something that was taught to me in my craniosacral program at IPSB with Gary Strauss, who's amazing. He's not like the normal craniosacral, technical, very black and white osteopath, like this is what you must do. He was a polarity practitioner first. So he was an energy worker that learned cranio, that approaches it from an energy standpoint, which is like totally up my alley. And like, this is why I feel like I had to learn it from him too, because it's way flowy that way, the way that we learned it. But what he had taught us about the energy process really helped me understand the cycle of energy process of like just what this means. So if I may, this is a good time. So we start the day or the moment we're going out in neutral, high, baseline, nothing, just neutral, right? And then in comes a trigger, an activator, something that pisses you off. You get cut off in traffic, or your partner picks a fight with you, or whatever that is. You get activated, you get triggered by something. And then the next thing is chaos. Chaos ensues. Things get broken and thrown. The tower falls. Like all of this crazy shit drama. This is the drama phase. The names and the yelling and all of that crap, right? After that, well, everything's broken. Now it's been disassembled. Disassembly phase is like, oh, I'm so tired, I can't get out of bed, or depression, like the low, you can't move. Everything's just broken on the floor and you can't get out of bed. That is where people fear getting stuck. People, I've noticed, especially here in the West, are really comfortable in that chaos, in the destruction and the blaming and the I'm just going to break it. I'm going to take my toys and go home. Like all of that. They're way more comfortable there because they feel like they have more control and they're valid in their feelings, all of that kind of crap. It's the disassembly that scares people the most because their fear is they will never get out of it. That once you're down and you're broken on the ground, that's it. End of game. That's not true. This is a really important phase. This is the rest period. This is the time where you can resource, where you begin to look at the broken pieces and be like, does this serve me? What can I salvage? Do I want to rebuild this? Or maybe I'll just leave it scattered and I'll turn it into a mosaic. You can choose a lot of what you do ultimately during this phase of quiet, of introspection, of rest, of healing. This is the healing phase. And we want to rush it too much sometimes. But I do promise you the next phase is coming. The next one is circulation. The energy now has room to flow in and among the broken pieces, creating a brand new foundation for you. This is the transmutation. This is all right, I'm going to take it, I'm going to turn it into this, So the circulation phase you can recognize as like, I think I'm going to take a shower today. I have a little bit of energy. I'm going to get some of these to-dos and then I'm going to rest, So like you begin to feel better again. It's after that, the next phase is insight. That is where you're like, oh, so that fight happened because this happened way before then, and that triggered me because of this, and then I responded like that, and that was not great. And like the insight, look at where it is. Look at where on like that circle in this cycle, it's like way over there, like fucking 10 o'clock, And so many people get stuck between 2 and 4, you know what I mean? And they don't want to go down and they rest in the 6. But it's that insight where you learn, you resolve, you're like, okay, the next time that this sort of thing happens, I'm going to do it this way. And this is the growth. Like, okay, I get it. And then after that, you're like, back to peace, back to neutral. Neutral is peace. That's what people are really looking for. So you hear peace of mind, peace in my heart. Letting that go. You know what I mean? It is peace that they're going for. They just don't know that means detachment into neutrality.
Right. So this whole process, just to clarify, this is kind of the timeline and the cycle of your emotions when you have a triggering situation ignite you. Mm-hmm. So this is just the natural human process that we go through.
The energy process that happens to us all day, every day, on different layers and dimensions and different times and spaces.
Okay, because that about sums up my whole life 24/7.
Yeah. And these phases that you go through this cycle, some are longer lasting. Some will last weeks, months, days, whatever it is. And then there's some where you can process it in minutes. It just depends on your experience. What are you looking at? What is here for you? So because we beings, now you and I, we can only see out the front of our face. We can only see ahead of us maybe a little bit of the periphery. That's our conscious mind can perceive our vision in this scope. But our bodies, our physical bodies, are processing information greater than our mind can ever even fathom. Behind us is processing information, which is how you can feel when someone's staring at you. Like you're reading a book or you're somewhere on a bus or you're walking or you're just in a class, you're anywhere and you can feel something looking at you. Turn around, you can see somebody behind you looking at you. Your body can perceive 360, like all around you.
Yeah, with I don't know, like 70,000, it's probably more than,
way more
than 70,000 cells in our body.
Oh God, there's millions, billions.
I don't
Like,
know
there's
where
so
I got
many
the
things.
70,000 from. Yeah, no, that doesn't
So you're
surprise me.
processing information all day, every day. That's a lot. Our conscious mind can only handle so much, but this is happening. And so I found a lot of comfort in this information, because once I know the cycle, well, okay, great. You just got to go through it. Even the washing cycle, the rinsing and the washing and the spinning, it has a beginning and it has an end, but it also, the beginning is the end,
Yeah.
but you can get through it.
Yeah.
It has to keep going. It's not just going to stop there. If it's stopping there, you got to look for blockages. You got to look for the resistances. You got to see what is impeding the movement
Right.
back to that neutrality.
You know what I'm realizing that I often do? My brain loves to intellectualize.
Yes.
And I have found oftentimes when I'm in, I guess like the second phase, it's like the trigger happens and then that's kind of like the low energy phase of like the depression, the anxiety coming up from it, right? That's the second phase.
Goes neutral, activation, chaos, disassembly.
Okay.
4. Disassembly is 4.
Wait, what was, so there's the trigger and then chaos?
As in like trigger / activation.
Oh, okay. So then the chaos
Something
is like
pulses you.
the immediate reaction to the trigger. Okay. And then the outcome of that, which usually isn't great naturally when we're reacting instead of responding to a trigger, right? Is the depression or the anxiety, the natural response from that?
The disassembly.
The disassembly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Depends on who you are, like where you kind of get stuck.
Okay. Well, I noticed that oftentimes when I'm in that disassembly phase, I've had a track record of, because like I do love information, and especially when I was in college taking like psychology courses and starting to become aware of like my brain and like how I function and how I've been functioning, it started giving me a lot of like insight, but I have had the habit of bringing the insight phase in while I'm in the disassembly phase to kind of bypass that feeling and to bypass, I guess, all the other stages. I'll try to be like, oh, okay, well, like, this sucks, but, well, if I can understand intellectually why everything is happening, then it'll go away. Like, oh my God, like, I'm so aware, like, everything's fine. Surprise, the anxiety is still, like, very much in my body because I'm not actually feeling it and addressing it and allowing it to flow through me, through feeling it and then allowing it to release naturally. So it's interesting to hear this like laid out in specific phases because I haven't ever heard it expressed to me in that way before. Next time I'm going through this cycle, I feel like I'm going to keep that in the back of my head and be like, oh, okay, let's like honor each stage that we're at and allow it to be and allow myself and whatever my emotions need, whether like my inner kid got really triggered or like my inner teen or my inner censor and critic. Just like give it a sec and let it go through the things naturally.
Yeah, we definitely try to speed track the healing process.
Yeah.
And that doesn't always serve our highest good because you're going to miss pieces or things or even resourcing and feeling more energy. If you don't allow yourself the rest to heal, your body's going to take you out through illness. If you're not resting, your body's going to get a cold, you're going to break something, you're going to get into a car accident, something is going to come to make you slow down, to force you to disassemble and like, can you fix that? Can you look at this? There's plenty of time during insight, to like use your logic and kind of make sense of all the things that had happened. There is literally a time and place for that. But that's what the mind does because it's uncomfortable in that feeling state. Anything like that doesn't feel amazing. It just like wants to just let that go, protect.
Yeah.
From having that feeling.
Absolutely. A lot of the work that I've been doing is returning to my body and allowing my emotions to be felt instead of repressed and ran away from. And something that I think I heard on another podcast recently was just the importance of you can't like we can't even as humans really get to the true insight phase if we don't allow ourselves to go through that entire process.
Mm-hmm.
Because then what really is that insight? It's just projected from some other
It's corrupted data.
situation.
It's not complete data.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't make a good decision or figure out a plan if you're missing pieces. You can make good guesses. You can try your best, but it's not serving as well as you'd hope it would be.
Yeah, definitely. Did you have more information to share on this cycle, or can I ask?
You can ask.
Okay. I guess two things. I did want to ask earlier, because you were mentioning how high you were feeling from like the healing circle.
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of like with being in that heightened state, I kind of just naturally want to start asking questions about like, oh, like tips for returning to neutrality and how can we support that on a day-to-day. So I guess with the healing circle as an example, I mean, should we be like, before we go into those spaces, if we noticed a heightened sense of ourselves, is it important that we return ourselves back to neutral, or
go with a ride, man? Like that's the life. That's living. That's having the experiences, not trying to control your emotions. I'm not trying to shut anything down. But like the work I do is about being present. Like for me, like my personal work is being in joy. So I notice, I pay attention to my feelings, what I'm doing, where I'm going. So on my drive from my house to the healing circle in Malibu that day, I noticed how happy I felt. That it was just this light, oh man, how do I even describe this? It was like this bubbling joy. Like I'm doing all the things I've been wanting to do for so long. And to me, what that was my body was validating my choices, that what I was doing, where I was going was in alignment with my highest good because I was connected to that joy state. I'm not going to shut that down because I'm like, oh no, I don't want it to be too much or get addicted or, like, no, enjoy it. Like if you're going to eat that ice cream cone, eat the ice cream cone. Like savor every lick. Like,
okay, fair.
Allow yourself the indulgence and the joy of the experience. But have awareness that you're going to come back to that neutral state. And sometimes when you go really far outside your comfort zone or like what you're used to imbibing in, or getting to that certain level, if you go past your normal limit, you're going to snap back and you might need to recover. So watching the judgment of like, but I was so active and productive for 4 days. Why am I so tired? You were just been working so hard. You just ran a marathon. Energetically and spiritually speaking, you were working out that whole time. Your body needs time to recover. You need time to integrate all of the information, all of the data, the information that you got, the connections. Like, you need time to just integrate and just download it and take it in, and then recharge all the energy you just expended through that project or whatever it is that you were doing. So give yourself some grace to recover after the extremes, positive and negative. It's all stress, good or bad. Having a baby can be really joyful and amazing, but also really stressful and challenging, so good, bad, doesn't matter. It's just the energy of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just naturally allowing the ebb and flow of the good and the bad extremes, but just knowing and remembering that we can come back to this baseline of neutrality.
Mm-hmm. And that's where the rest happens. That's where the resourcing, where the reconnection and like just you need that downtime. Whenever we upgrade a phone or computer or anything, it does all this work, downloads all this information. And what does it do? It restarts. It has to shut down and then bring it all back up together. Our bodies are very electric and hydraulic and fluid. Like there's so many systems. It's amazing. And they do all these different things. So we need time to turn off to reboot. And there's lots of ways that we can do this for ourselves. That's why self-care is so important. To give ourselves that time to allow ourselves to heal, to create new realities, new experiences, to release, and all of this stuff. It's exhausting.
Yeah.
Healing is really tiring.
It is really fascinating to me, just as you were talking and explaining all of that and using these like physical forms of examples of how like the phone needs to upgrade and then shut down and restart, or running the marathon. You just ran a marathon for 5 days straight. You can't keep running the marathon. You need to ice your legs. You need to get your ass to sleep.
Don't forget to drink your water.
Yeah, oh my God, you need to hydrate. So many things.
Uh-huh.
And it's just, it's wild how this is so ingrained in our brains here in the West. Even still, like people like myself, where I feel relatively emotionally literate and aware, but I still have those programs of just that harshness on myself of like, why am I not being productive? It's like the things that we can't see externally, like our emotions or like our spiritual well-being, because we can't see it with our eyes, we discount it and we think that we don't need certain things. And it's very tragic because it is exactly like taking care of physical health. Like when you have a cold, you're not going to beat the shit out of yourself for being sick. At least I would hope not in most cases. But I mean, it's like how parents oftentimes, for some, there can be this completely empathetic and soft and compassionate side that can come out for kids when they're sick. But the rest of the time, not giving that level of care and nurturing and just kind of ignoring them.
Or they can become angry because they're inconvenienced because they have to stay home from work and they have to, like all this. Yeah. There's different ways to go about that.
Right. But I just, with the example of
Yeah.
a compassionate parent being like, oh yeah, like you're sick, like of course. But when it comes to like our emotions and our spiritual selves, whether things are making us happy or not, like tapping into our spirit and our soul and being like, how are you doing? Like we're so much harder on ourselves, or at least I often tend to be.
Well,
with those
culture has
things.
taught us to burn the candle at both ends, which keeps us in like with the anxiety and the stress and the depression that keeps us constantly in this fight or flight mode,
Yeah.
which taxes your adrenal glands. And when your body is taxed like that, it increases the cortisol, which has its own adverse effects in the body, from a bloated belly to not being able to digest to like the other organs not working as efficiently because the body is never in a restful state. You never are giving it that chance to heal because you're go, 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 because we've been taught that our value lies not just inherently in us, but in what we can offer and do for others at our own expense, which is a bunch of malarkey. Yeah. Like allowing yourself the space to feel your feelings, because we've also been sold another bill of goods that feelings are unsafe. There's no room for them. There's no good about having feelings. They only cause problems and drama and all this other kind of crap. When my truth is, our feelings are our superpowers. They tell you things. It's the intuition. It's the knowing things without knowing. Being connected to your body and your emotions and everything that's working together tells you who's around you, And if it's giving you all these red flags and you're a little kid being like, this doesn't feel safe. Is this okay? And then you get yelled at like, this is how it's always been. Why are you having a problem? No one else is complaining about this. Like all of that. Like you learn to shut that shit down because it's not safe.
Right.
So part of my work is being connected to those emotions and those feelings. But a lot of those things we need to heal so that we can utilize it as the tool that it is. Because that's why neutrality is important to me, because my body is a tool in my work. When I work with another individual at this point, groups, I'm learning that's a different system completely. that's more conduit channel stuff. But when I work on individuals, like with their bodies and their energy bodies and all, like the whole thing, I feel things in my body that relates to them. When I tune into somebody, we're sharing the same energy field. I sort of like enter into their field so that my body can inform me what's happening over there. So like when I start running energy through somebody, I can feel in my body where it stops. I can also see it in my mind's eye. So they sort of like work together to give me a greater picture, more data kind of stuff.
Mhm.
But if I wasn't good at clearing myself or grounding myself, I won't be able to read what I'm looking at. There's too many filters. There's too much of my need. There's too much of my unhealed stuff. I've just gotten really good at putting myself aside. My whole consciousness goes, my ego, like that part of me goes outside.
Yeah.
Like I'm like, see ya, and then it's just my higher self and my guides and them, whomever I'm working on. So that's why neutrality was important for me, so that I can be neutral, so that I can know what I'm feeling, seeing, experiencing, what they might be going through. And then, we can have conversations around it and we do stuff.
Yeah.
So
that is so integral to body and energy work, to be able to tap in at a neutral level, to be able to understand what somebody else is feeling and experiencing and going through.
which is also why light and love is my core, because there's nothing but respect there and gentleness. It's like, you don't have to do anything. Like, I'm not trying to change you, but if you would like to look at this, I see this in your hip, or this is the image that I see when I touch this part, or can you talk to me about this? What are you noticing? You know what I mean? Like, it's just information. And yeah, very respectful healing space, because it's very vulnerable, and I'm so honored that people let me look at them like all the way. It's super great.
You're a very safe person to be around.
Thanks.
So
I worked on it, because that's what I desired. I create the space that I want to live in, and my desire was to feel safe, to feel protected, to be open and be myself. And so, because that's the space that I hold, when people come into that space, they're like, oh, this is nice. I like it in here. Yeah.
Obviously, like, neutrality is integral and of your highest priority when working with clients. Is there a neutrality practice that you have for yourself? I know you do like the self-care and everything. And with everything you talked about, you have your balance.
Yeah, I feel like I do, but I didn't actually think about looking at it that way. Okay, hold on. I have to
take your time.
Yeah, I feel like it's the same. It's the same for what I do for others. I practice with myself. It's that self-compassion. So that's where I've also learned to grow it. Is the more I give that to myself, like I let myself off the hook, like, I did so much today. Like I didn't get all of the things, but I did what I could, and I like I give myself that as well.
And that returns you to the state of neutrality from a potentially
because
more
if my mind was all like, you should have done this, and I'm like, I know, but that's not what happened. I needed to do this instead. So yeah, I soothe, I do self-care in order to bring myself back to neutral when my inner critic is being a little loud, or there's certain limiting thoughts or anything like that. Like, acknowledged. Yep, that's definitely the old dialogue that I've heard a lot. I have a new one. Let me tell you what it is. And then I'll tell my mind what the new thing is.
Let me hear it.
It depends on what it was, but
okay.
Just as an example.
Oh, I see.
But yeah, absolutely. So within, so without. As within, so without. There's the phrase. So I practice what I preach. When I say give yourself space and time to feel your feelings, and if you don't want to do anything or you're super angry, you express it, like, or get it out or process it. Like, I can only teach what I've tried and worked on. That's my understanding. And that's all I do.
Yeah. And we can only go as deep and as far with other people as we can with ourselves. So
I've said that, like, because it was important for me growing up, or just until recently, to really be seen by people. But then I realized they can't see me. They can only see me as well as they can see themselves. And so I don't care what people see. Ultimately, it's none of my business what people think about me. That's theirs. But if they love me, I'll accept that because I'm reflecting love. So thank you so much. You know, when they see something negative or something that they don't like or a flaw, I'm like, oh, look at that. That's an unhealed aspect of you that you are not ready to look at. So you're seeing it in me and making it my responsibility. Fascinating. That's not mine. I'm good with that. I've worked on that. I know I have that issue. I've tracked that. I know that's there. I'm glad you can see it, but can you see the other stuff?
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely been a lesson that I feel like I'm learning more and more and wrapping my mind around slowly over time. It's like, oh, maybe that isn't mine just because someone is telling me with a lot of force and a lot of energy that it is.
Yes. That's usually a big clue that there's emotional manipulation there and maybe a bit of projection.
Mayhaps.
Man.
Just a smidge.
Totally.
Well, nice. We are wrapping up a little bit on time.
All right.
We're almost at the end. Do you have any more little tidbits or questions you want to ask me on neutrality? Not that I have a ton of experience at the moment, but I've loved this conversation. Held a lot of great information.
Lovely. I feel like I covered the main things that I did want to express around this concept
Nice.
of neutrality. One last thing I do feel like it was the biggest challenge for me in this was the emotional detachment because my mind tried to make me feel terrible. It's like, oh, you don't care about your family or how they're feeling, like they're struggling. But I'm like, yeah, but that's wrapped up in my codependence. So can I be okay while the rest of my family is not okay? Because that's the definition of codependence is can you be okay if everybody else is not? In my past, no.
Well, that's the definition of not being codependent, or the question of codependence.
Yeah. Yes, that is the question. Because if you can't, then yes, you have a codependence issue. If you can't be okay while someone else is struggling. So I've had to learn how to be okay with me, in me, around me, while somebody else is struggling. Otherwise, I'd be a really crappy healer. If somebody was going through something really hard and I was just so uncomfortable and like that doesn't
Yeah, like
work.
if you started sobbing with them.
Like I have cried, I sympathy cry. I'm not feeling the emotion, but my eyes are watering. Like I can feel, like I can tell.
Yeah, you're sympathetic but not empathetic in that moment. No,
because I'm empathizing, because I'm feeling, I'm recognizing,
right.
I'm resonating with what they're going through, but I am not emotionally attached to it.
Okay.
I allow it to flow. I recognize what is. So that's me sitting next to the person being like, yeah, it's really dark in here. You know, like it's a little smelly. But you said that you knew it was smelly down here. You know, so I've gotten really used to just being neutral and allowing people to be where they are, because that's where they are. That's where they need to be. I honor that. I'm not trying to change it because that's not for me to change. That's not my job. Would you like a light? I have a flashlight. We can look around. We can explore a little bit. I can ask you some questions, right? We can bring in some air, you know, no pressure, just asking. So that it's really served me. But I used to feel guilty for being okay while my family wasn't.
Oh, that one's, I've been learning that one. That was hard.
But ultimately, that's the point. Like when we're healing our triggers, the trigger is always, it's not always going to be there, but it's sort of like, it just points at a healing space. Like this upset you because was not because of now, it's because of 20 years ago. You had this experience and it's just showing up right here. So eventually the idea is to decommission the triggers by healing the emotional attachment to that experience. So eventually the things that used to bother you behaviorally or whatever, getting cut off, like whatever the issue is, the more healing you do, it won't trigger you anymore because you understand it. You've detached the emotional hurt from it.
Mm-hmm.
And it just becomes a thing that has been part of your past. So.
How powerful.
It's amazing.
To be able to transmute that.
Fucking amazing. The The freedom you feel from not allowing old triggers to affect your behavior or sway your state of being, that's power.
Yeah.
Healing, crying, processing, all of that is strength and courageous. And the person who's doing that work will benefit. And ultimately, their environment will benefit from that because that's the space that they're going to hold. And this is how we help heal humanity one person at a time. Fear is transmissible through the air, through the radio waves, through the television.
Like wildfire.
It spreads just through the air. Whereas healing and light is a one-on-one touch connection kind of thing. You know, I light your candle, you light theirs. You know, like we light each other's. You have to touch, you have to connect. And it's slow and personal. So
It can be.
it can be.
But also, you got one candle in a room, that entire room does light up.
It does. Yeah.
So I feel like it's fast and like can be fast in the physical form. I feel like we talked about this a couple episodes ago. And I was like, no, man, love spreads super rapidly.
Yes.
In the physical. I feel like fear does get a lot more easily transmittable through like technology.
Yeah. You don't have to be present. But the love can spread like in the healing circle. It amplifies.
Yeah.
Like you can heal yourself. You are the power of one. But you bring in one other healer, that's the power of 10. You bring in 2, that's 20. You know what I mean? Like the number of people who are holding space for that exponentially increases the ability, the quickness, like all of that. Yeah. So, but there we go.
Nice.
Sweet.
Shout out to all the listeners out there and also to us for doing this work and creating more and more space and
Continue
maybe
to
more
show up.
Yeah, maybe creating more neutrality in ourselves. So that way we can be those little beacons of light for the rest of the environment and the people around us.
The space holders of peace.
Yeah. And then that can light them up. And then those people can light those people up. We're doing it. We're changing the world. One person at a time and one day at a time.
Indeed. Keep on keeping on. Keep on that healing path. It's so worth it. You're not alone. There's so many skills and resources. You don't need to do this alone, nor should you.
Nope.
There's so many of us that want to just support and listen and hold space and be respectful and, you know, help you feel better.
1,000%. That is going to wrap up this week's episode. As always, thank you so much for listening. We hope you received whatever it is you may have needed from this conversation today. Now, for the next 2 episodes, we are moving on to the beautiful topic of holding space. This concept is one of the greatest tools and gifts we can learn to hone for ourselves, for others, for all beings and aspects of life. We can't wait to share it. Have a great week, everyone.